Well, viewers and listeners and watchers, we're late, but we're great, both of us. Thanks to unbelievable cunning and dexterity, we have finally got our act together. And you'll notice that Pat's features are even more distinct and more impressive. The face of a leader if ever I saw one.
Oh, yeah. It took me about an hour to get this camera working.
Yeah, we were saying bad words. We were. Okay, let's not waste any more time then. You want to start with Jim Allister. Jim Allister caught your eye, Pat, on The View, and he caught mine too. But let's hear what you thought about him when he was interviewed by Mark Carruthers and what was that guy O'Toole from SDLP?
Matthew O'Toole.
Yeah, Matthew
By the way, Matthew O'Toole I find very, very impressive. But anyway, that's not where we're chatting about. Jim Allister, I was listening to Jim Allister on Thursday night, and halfway through it, I came to the conclusion Jim Allister is a gift that keeps on giving. Jim Allister wants to return to some sort of 1940s, 1950s halcyon days of unionism. He seems to think there's only one community in Northern Ireland has got, rights and can demand everything is their own way. The nationalist people have had to put up. Let's have a quick rundown. Have had to put up with 100 years of unionism. They've had to put up with bigotry, discrimination, and whatever else you want to call it. They had to put up for 50 years of a one-party government. There are 4 out of 6 counties now, nationalist majorities, etc., 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 and the demographics have changed. But Jim seems to believe that and of course, let me one final point: the nationalist community have had Brexit imposed on them. But Jim thinks that the nationalist community should just cave in and absolutely give unionism exactly what it is. Like, he doesn't seem to believe that there's compromises, that the unionists or the nationalist people have been compromising for the best part of 100 years. Jim seems to say, unless the unionist population gets everything it wants in regard to the protocol, the show's over. Now, that's grand, because I think why I say that, the gift that keeps on giving. I don't think there's a hope in hell that the British government are going to give Jim everything he wants.
Well, you're crediting Jim with being, not a man at the moment. You're crediting him with simply having these beliefs and, assuming that the nationalists will adopt a supine position. I think it's a bit more cunning than that. I think Jim's main intention is to keep the DUP their feet to the fire, so to speak. He keeps saying this. So I think in his heart, he probably knows that they won't get the kind of thing he's looking for, this, pure abolition of the protocol. But he's going to make it as difficult as possible for the DUP to strike a deal of some kind. And that's why I think he keeps concentrating his fire on them. And in a way, he has a point, because he does say, it is undeniably true that the protocol means that the North is being treated differently from other parts of the UK. And if that's the case economically...
but hold on, let me hold you. You've said it and I've heard other people said it and I've said it. But I thought about that the other day. Do you remember, you would have known it better than I, that remember the old days when they'd say there'd be some insurance and then under on an ad on TV, and then have you looked at the not available in Northern Ireland? And by the way, this thing about Northern Ireland being treated different, Jude, for 50 years, there was no parliament in Wales, there was no parliament in Scotland, and there was a parliament in London. The only place that was treated differently was Northern Ireland, because it's on a different island. So Northern Ireland always has had to be treated differently. So this is new, or it's different, as bollocks.
Well, it's not, I agree with you, it's not new, but would you not say that whether it's new or not, it does have a at least slightly destabilizing effect on the North as an integral part of the UK?
Yes and no, but Jude, during the foot and mouth thing, Northern Ireland was treated differently from the part of the UK. Yeah. You find yourself saying the same thing, but here's the point: where the EU and the UK clash is on the border on the island of Ireland. It's not in leafy suburbs of Cheshire or wherever. So something has to. So Northern Ireland is different, whether Jim likes it or not.
Well, you see, you mentioned that foot and mouth thing, and that's true. But again, take into account the fact that there's a background here. And the background essentially is last May. That's the background. They're now faced with a situation where they're going to be in a minority. They are in a minority, and therefore they're going to feel even more insecure and, be fixated on this protocol. I detected from Leo and from other people commentating on it that the EU and the UK were moving fairly rapidly towards some form of solution that they would put to the DUP. Now, if they come up with one, do you think that the DUP will accept it, or will they be able to put a gloss on it so that the DUP will accept it, or will they go, as Jeffrey says, oh, words are fine, we want this whole thing abolished?
Jude, I want to go back to the first point, and I'll come back to the second point you made there. Jim is on record as saying that no self-respecting unionist will go into government with Sinn Féin and serve alongside Sinn Féin. But that's a purist position again. So, like, if he gets his way on that, fair enough then. But the second thing, I think, Leo Varadkar saying we've all made mistakes and so on, and I genuinely think that's a sort of a reaching out or a softening of position to give, what has Nelson Mandela said about, you see your opponent, always give them enough room, so that they can bow out gracefully or make a compromise gracefully.
Or as Seamus Balance says, when you stand up after the meeting, you shouldn't be insisting that the other fella isn't wearing his trousers.
Yeah, well, that's a much more mundane or prosaic way of putting it, but that's exactly it. And I think Šefčovič and Leo Varadkar making a month sort of noises this last while, and I presume that's to sort of ease the. And I noticed several unionists saying yesterday, I'm glad to hear it, and it's about time and a recognition. By the way, I don't think anybody's entitled to walk over the unionist community, far from it. But hey, they're not the only ones who've got skin in this game.
Well, would you be optimistic, Pat, that out of the talks that are going on between the UK and the EU now, that they'll come up with something that the DUP will accept? Leave aside Jim.
Right, here's the thing, Jude. Rishi Sunak, I don't think is any way emotionally involved in Northern Ireland. He's a money man, he's an economist, he's a banker, I don't think, right, Jude, he doesn't need 8 DUP guys at Westminster. He's got a big enough majority. And I think the biggest thing by far are the strikes, the cost of living, and the next election. And the last thing I think he's concerned about is 8 DUP. So I think either they get on the train or they get left behind.
Well, you see, there is one, we'll move on after this, but there is one other way of looking at it, and that is certainly the DUP in the north here are well down the list of crises that Rishi Sunak is facing. But if the DUP, if loyalism was to reject it, be told they had to take it, and there was to be unrest or even violence, my God, that could be the sort of tombstone completely for the Tory government. So,
okay, but wasn't it Ardern and Sir Geoffrey when the protocol was originally agreed? Oh, we can work with this. There's benefits.
What happened there? What happened there?
Yeah, it's because they've been sort of that's sort of red herring. That Jude, let's be less clear and make this clear. There is no way the constitutional position of Northern Ireland changes until the day and hour that the people vote for it.
But things, Pat, things before that could lead towards more voting for, say, Irish unity. I mean, you could be creating an atmosphere with certain events. That's when the poll comes.
But the word you just could be. There's no guarantee. Jude, let's get here. The original sin here was Brexit, which was absolutely pushed to the nth degree. And I remember Arlene and all the going into Westminster, and they were loving having the power that they had. Well, okay, karma. It's worked out opposites of what they intended. And the loyalists and the unions can't turn around and say, oh, by the way, this is the Nationals' fault. When you aim for and work towards the hardest Brexit you get, and it blows up in your face, them's the Brex.
The only sort of reservation I'd have with your analysis of it is that the DUP and sort of maybe Jim Allister to a degree, but certainly the DUP appear to have the support in their stand of the unionist community, which
Yeah.
surprises me. But there you go. That's what the polls indicate.
But that doesn't surprise me in the least. Like I think if you're a unionist, it's easy to whip up. Hey, look, the fears. Yeah, we're getting sold down the river. We're getting all the rest of it. We're being treated differently.
Pat, wait a minute. Now we are told that there's lots of unionists and lots of nationalists too who are doing well out of the protocol. So is there not at least a substantial number of unionists who would reject this fuss about the protocol because it's doing good as far as they're concerned in terms of cross-border trade?
Someone. I think there are a lot of them are sort of not that engaged with this fuss at all. But if the choice is, back in unionism or back in nationalism, they're going to back unionism. I don't think it's a hard issue for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. So, did you answer my question about whether you thought that the Rishi would come up with some deal in the EU?
I think in about another couple of weeks there will be some massive breakthrough, and the EU will offer. And Jeffrey will have two choices: sell it as we've got this deal, and we've got acknowledgement that our rights and so on. The checks are disappearing. The European Court will only intervene on set circumstances, and the UK and the EU will have equal role, something along those lines. And there'll be a red lane for goods stopping in Northern Ireland, or coming in, and a red lane for ones going on to the south. Excuse me. And basically, they'll have some sort of, I presume, some sort of face-saving format that Jeffrey will be able to buy into.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, we'll leave Jim to stew in his juice. But I mean, in a way, Jim has pinned himself into a corner because he has assumed the extremist position. And he always has to be to the right of the DUP. So he doesn't have a choice. Once he starts to soften, he's ended, he's finished. Okay, let's talk about, do you want to have a drink of water or something, Pat?
No, I'm all right.
Okay.
All right.
The Scottish Parliament. The Scottish Parliament has this law. I did a blog on this, actually. The Scottish Parliament has passed, they've passed it, I think, haven't they? This ruling that you can be 16 and you can self-describe your gender without going through medical forms of validation, first of all. And the British government are up in arms about this. They say they don't have a right to do this. Scotland's insisting they do have a right to it. I think personally that it's not so much this law that matters, it's the clash between the two over this law.
Absolutely, Jude. Jude, there's no doubt. Some people are trying to claim this is because of equality that it has implications for the rest of the country, for the UK. Jude, it's rubbish. There are numerous laws passed by Scotland and regulations, even the things like COVID, where Scotland had seriously different regulations than England. And there was no problem with them whatsoever. Jude, and towards the end, I think, of 2021, there was a bit of law was passed in Westminster that nobody seemed to notice. It was called the Internal Markets Act, which gave, and it was a law introduced by Boris Johnson, knowing and the full knowledge that after Brexit, Scotland was dangerous because they had the right under their Parliament Act to do as they saw fit, or by and large. So they introduced this Internal Markets Act, whereby a lot of the powers of the Scottish Parliament were secreted away back to Westminster. And I think the last day here is now Richie Sunak and the Tories in London yanking the chain of Nicola Sturgeon and so on, and sort of saying, let's get there's shades of the Spanish Parliament with the Basques. Don't think the day of you guys telling us what to do is over. And it's a big issue. It's a really big issue because they're basically the devolution that you thought you have, you don't have.
I'd be a bit worried about your analogy with the Basques and Spain, because the Basques were flattened. Spain won hands down there. So I do hope it's not that. I would have thought that the Scots Nats would have been really, really happy with the fact that it was rejected out of hands by Rishi, because that's another, people are saying, people who might be on the verge of being pro-independence but not quite there, they're going to see this kind of thing and say, this is high-handed London. What the hell are they telling us to do about what is a liberalisation of this law? Incidentally, I don't agree with the law. I think the law is a stupid law. But that's not the point.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
This is a wedge issue, Jude. This is a culture war. This has got nothing to do with equality or anything. This is, I think the London Parliament thought, here's a good issue that we can win some support back in Scotland with. It's a wedge issue. It's not an issue, big issue, political issue, and it's politics here, Jude. It's not anything to do with the overall running of our governance or equality in the UK.
Yeah.
The Tories want to yank the chain of the Scottish Nationals, and they think this one gives them cover.
Very silly, really, to do it. Except they're doing it, playing it for their, Middle England, who would be happy to see that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that they'd be paying a heavy price maybe eventually for that, because the fact of the matter is they could lose Scotland.
I think they will lose Scotland totally. In fact, it's the shades of the Sinn Féin, Arlene Foster's crocodile remark. I think at the next election, all Nicola Sturgeon said, we got a devolved parliament. We're ruling ourselves, and we were doing a very good job of it. Look what London has done post Brexit. We're being reined back in again. So I think it'd be an easy sell. But the only thing is, you see, if Westminster. By the way, I don't think my Basque and Spanish analogies that far wrong. I think this is the first clampdown on Scotland, and I think it's deliberate. And I think remember what do you call him, Cameron and his Exchequer, Chancellor of the Exchequer. I can't remember the guy's name at the time. They said that the next time they would never again allow Scotland to have a referendum.
Why do you think the Basque? I was just quoting the Basque analogy and Spain in terms of the. Well, I think I'd be on the Basque side there, but I mean, you don't hear any talk about the Basque effort at independence now.
No, see, the problem with the Basques, and I don't remember the exact details. The Basques never had a majority. I think it was around about 49% in favor of independence, even though they sort of they voted for a lot of sort of independence candidates. After this, I wonder in Scotland. Scotland's pretty much the same, Jude. They're like a lot of people are voting for the SNP. I don't think there's a huge majority voting for independence, which is a sort of a contradiction in terms, isn't it? You vote for a nationalist party, but you don't want nationalism.
Well, we have something of that here. I think I think a lot of people would be voting for Sinn Féin. In a very vague way, they might say, "Oh, yeah, good idea to have a united Ireland." But I think a lot of them, when it comes to the crunch, might back down on that.
I think
that's a pretty cynical view, maybe, but I think there's truth in it.
But to use your one on the way forward, until the whole thing about a united Ireland and everywhere else is put down on paper and the roadmaps, then people will decide: is this the way forward? When all the arguments are out on the table, staying part of the UK. Is that where we want? Do we want to be part of Europe? Do we want to be part of United Ireland? Do we, all those things have to be put out, all the details, and then people make an informed decision.
By the way, didn't Nicola Sturgeon say that she was going to hold an indie ref in November of this year?
That I am not sure. Didn't she?
Said that, I think she said that, something very like that quite a while ago.
I think she threatened it, Jude, but did that not the High Court rule that that's illegal?
They said that you can't do that, but I don't think that they. Well, I didn't hear her say. Well,
no point in me saying I know, because I don't. But I think I read there the other day. She's saying this decision by the Westminster. I think she's going to show a legal challenge to it.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. Actually, the November of this year seems a bit hasty in my view, actually, in the present circumstances. Like a border poll here, I think I'd like to see a wee bit more spade work done before they'd actually go to the poll.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to a woman who has got fed up with politics, for one reason or another. And she's a widely admired woman. And I'm not sure why she's so widely admired. And that's Jacinda Ardern, who has resigned as the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Why was she so revered almost? Why was she so popular?
Jude, apparently, and I can only what I have read, because I've never met the woman, as neither of you, obviously. But apparently,
you never know, Pat. Never know.
You never know. Apparently, she's a woman of principle that absolutely zero scandal. that she's been upfront, and she says out front what she says. There's been no nepotism, no sort of jobs for the boys. Even when she had her child, she took 3 months off on maternity leave. She didn't try to do a Margaret Thatcher, and apparently a very compassionate. Remember, there was a mass shooting in New Zealand. She went around and I was in the Muslim. She went there and dressed as a Muslim. They said basically the claim is that she has sort of brought principle and decency back into New Zealand politics and to sort of world politics, and her handling, well, certainly at the initial of the COVID thing.
Yes, I think that's a key one, Pat. I think that was very important. The way she handled it.
Yeah, but Jude, the sort of tone has changed a wee bit. Apparently, things are not going that great in New Zealand, and our party's under pressure, and they're saying. Yeah. But I was reading one of the, I think her name was, she's a Maori woman, Jacinda Cooper or something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
She says that vitriolic abuse that Ardern has been getting from some of the male is bordering on straightforward misogyny. And remember, there was this, just to divert or digress through it, remember there was this an Australian woman, she was Prime Minister for a while, and they said the downright misogynistic abuse that she got was off the scale. So it's a tough job being a woman, particularly a decent, honourable woman.
It was very interesting, the 2 newspaper reports on Ardern's stepping down. The Irish Times said it was an example of somebody showing dignity and integrity and striking a very different note from the change of power in the United States and Brazil, where you had violence and so on, that she had conducted herself in a very... Did you know she was a Mormon, by the way?
Yeah.
She was reared as a Mormon, and she also became the world leader, although I hadn't ever heard there was such a thing. But apparently there's an International Union of Socialist Youth, and she was the world leader of that before she went into New Zealand politics. But they had this very positive image of her resignation in the Irish Times, but the Guardian said all the things that you were quoting. Debbie Niguera Packer said that stuff about outstanding leader been driven from office by constant personalisation and vilification. And some of her own MPs were saying she was driven from office. Yeah. It really is a pity. It's surprising in a way that she didn't say that when she was resigning. Like, she just said, I haven't anything left in the tank. But
maybe that's why she's not whinging. She's leaving. Now, unlike Donald Trump and unlike Bolsonaro and all.
Yeah, good point.
I know she is saying, but apparently, to use your terms or her terms, she said that you need a full tank to do this job because there's so many decisions every day about everything and so on. And she said she was burned out. And she didn't whinge about any of the things. She just said, maybe that's another reason to admire.
That's right. She went very smoothly with a smile to her partner and the fact that she had a child was starting school and maybe we should get married. It was pretty cool,
Yeah. She says, it's time to go. No, I've got a child and I need to look after the child. She didn't hold on to power. That the power was the biggest aphrodisiac in her life.
Yeah, that's amazing, because it is true that power, people find it very hard to give up power, but she seems to have done it with no bother. But then again, we don't know, the fact that she didn't mention this vilification doesn't mean that it wasn't there.
Absolutely.
Anyway, speaking of vilification and problems in politics, let's move to the state in which you live. Not the country now, the state that you live in. I'm not talking about the state of your house. I'm talking about the state you live in. The Irish Times had an article the other day, and they said it was a very shaky start for the government moving into the new year. And they cited the example of the junior minister, Damien English, who had to resign after a period. He had an incorrectly completed, I think it's a bit harsh, he had an incorrectly completed planning application 14 years ago. And as a result, I'm a wee bit iffy about that. Am I being too soft?
No, Jude. There's strict rules for MP. Look, Jude, we're going back to an era when the brown envelopes getting passed to MPs or TDs, and so on. And all these things then were introduced, this legislation, to ensure that everybody was above board. And and then there's, you see, Jude, sometimes it was incorrectly filled up. That's a sort of euphemism for sort of cover up of things that were done. So now I don't know the full details, so I'm not making any accusations. But that sort of thing, incorrectly filled up, sometimes can cover a multitude.
Well, that's
The
true.
problem, Jude, I don't think anybody's going to resign because they spelt their name wrong. There's something other than that. Maybe the planning permission was dodgy or something. I don't know. I really genuinely. So I'm not making an allegation. But here's the point. The political point is Damon English gave his resignation and was accepted. It's not as simple as everybody as it first appears. But there is a pattern here. Secondly, there was a guy called Robert Troy last year who also had to resign for very similar reasons. And now there's a guy who's, Mr. Clean, Pascal Donohoe, who also seems to be in duffs about his election expenses and so on. There was a guy, his name, Jude, as you said before we went on air, what residence in Northern Ireland? There's a guy called Michael Stone, who God. Anyway, for those who know, no explanation is necessary. This guy, Michael Stone, allegedly gave donations to what do you call him? His campaign, Pascal's campaign, and he also is alleged to have bought considerable number of tickets for the Fine Gael draw. Mr. Stone was then.
Fair enough, Pat. Come on, you can't go after somebody because they buy tickets. He just bought tickets. He might have thought he'd win something.
Yeah, but Mr. Stone was then appointed to 2 national boards, by I presume Pascal. So now. Right, Dr. Collins, you can take it from there. What communication of all
well, the two boards in question were the Northeast Inner City Implementation Board, which funds urban regeneration, and the other was the Land Development Agency, which is a body that was set up to coordinate the use of public land for social and affordable housing. There's 2 ways of looking at that, I think. One is the way that certainly Sinn Féin and many of the people in the Dáil who were questioning Pascal and who can't wait for Tuesday when Pascal's going to raise some other matters that he hasn't raised as yet. But and the second way of looking at it is it really a hanging offence if he, it amounted to a few guys going around putting up posters where they paid or where they not paid. He didn't mention because he maintains that he thought they were voluntary. So, I mean, to say you've got to step down from your position or we're going to put you in disgrace because of that. I know I'd share your worries about the culture of corruption, but at the same time.
But Judy, here's the point. Then you see, there's supposed to be rules and regulations about how much you can spend on an election to sort of have a bit of equality. Jude, in America now, it's not elections; you buy elections. And in Ireland too. There were supposed to be rules and regulations. Jude, if you have 30 guys out putting up posters and you're paying them £100 each, right away there's 3,000. You're only supposed to spend it. Jude, I actually was director of elections for a certain guy, and I can't remember now but that was very prescribed, and it was all to keep everything clean. And Jude, I don't think we did anything underhand just to be on the safe side, Jude, because the laws are now very strict. But Jude, if you're paying people and on the hand, and then saying, "Oh, by the way, see buying tickets as well," and Jude, if it's not dodgy, there can be the appearance of being dodgy,
and that's nearly as damaging. Do you think that Pascal's going to be seriously damaged after next Tuesday? Then, Pat?
Absolutely, Jude. Because there's a lot. Even I've heard now very moderate and people who I would regard as Fine Gael supporters saying there's something going on here, and Jude, that's not good. Pascal has been a safe pair of hands, and by the way, has been a very competent minister, and I would regard him as a very good one.
And he's all set for a career in Europe as well.
Yeah, and I have no personal acts, but it does seem if Pierce Doherty of Sinn Féin was on the last day and he asked the Taoiseach, Mr. Varadkar, he says, do you believe Pascal? And he says, if you do, which of the 3 versions he's given do you believe? Which was a great comment, I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I take your point. You know, you really do have to root out these dubious things where people say, "Oh, I forgot." You know, but did somebody
Yeah.
not say when this was going on that Sinn Féin themselves had made some error or had not?
Jude, if I was Sinn Féin, I'd be very, very careful about casting stones. But you see, in the Republic at the minute, there seems to be this sort of, because of, remember, there was payments to politicians, tribunal that went on for years and cost millions,
Yeah.
and so on. And so there's this thing, there's almost zero tolerance now of this sort of behavior on the basis that what appears on the surface is like a swan. That's what's going on underneath that they're really concerned about.
Boy,
So I think, go ahead, Jude.
I was going to say, in the light of what you're saying, Pat, and we're coming near the end now, but in the light of what you're saying, I've changed my mind. I thought that Pascal would sort of swim past this whole thing to keep the water analogy going. I thought he would float gracefully past all opposition on Tuesday. Now I'm beginning to wonder.
I'm thinking, Jude, I'm like, Pascal's a very smooth operator.
Yeah.
And by the way, I genuinely think he's a fairly honourable man. Well, look, Jude.
I hate the way he lisps. So sorry. Sorry, I hate the way he lisps.
But I've watched him on numerous occasions, and he's a very, very competent man.
Oh yeah,
and I genuinely don't think I think this might. No, I could be wrong. I thought that's a genuine error. But I am not in the dial, and I'm not privy to what other people might know. And I do think Pascal's in bother.
Pat, I agree with you. When people say that that was a genuine mistake, if what you've said is true, that there was this effort to root out this brown envelope stuff, there's no way that a man of Pascal's intelligence would forget or mistake. He'd have double checks and treble checks to make sure that this didn't happen. So I suspect he was caught, with his hand in the cookie jar.
Well, you see, know this, the famous one I read somewhere. These guys say, "Oh, I made a mistake and I forgot to do this." No, Damien English. Yeah. And somebody says, he never forgets or never made mistakes when he's putting on his expenses. Like there's no mistakes there. So oh, I forgot or I made a mistake. So you see the point on the surface, you'd say it's hardly a hanging offence to sort of make a mistake in regard to somebody I thought were volunteers and so on. And in fairness, I think I did. But it should. I presume there's all sorts of shenanigans that they're looking at and making claims about.
Okay, well, it's ending on the sad note of Pascal. There aren't many Pascals around anymore. It used to be a very popular name.
Huh? Yeah, we had a lecturer. I think he was a contemporary of yours, Pascal Harkin. That's the last Pascal I think I know.
No, Pascal Harkin. Can't place him. Can't place him. It's not. You're not thinking of Marius Harkin, are you?
Oh, Marius, sorry. He had a brother Pascal. Sorry.
There is. I know another Pascal, but there aren't too many of them. Anyway, tough cheese, Pascal Donohoe. You should have made sure you did the right thing and checked.
And you should have dotted the I's and crossed the T's if you're so anxious.
Sorry, Pascal. Sorry, it's curtains for you, old chap. Okay, Pat. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
And you.